The Harbinger pulled away from the second chance with grace that should have been impossible for something so massive. Daehyun sat in what the ship called the command throne, though it looked nothing like a chair. It was more like a space that shaped itself around him, responding to his thoughts before he fully formed them. He could feel the ship now, not just control it but feel it like an extension of his own body. When he thought about moving forward, the engines responded. When he worried about the silence, the sensors automatically focused in that direction. It was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. Byung-ho stood beside him, or rather floated. The command chamber had no gravity unless you wanted it to. He had taken to the neural interface faster than anyone expected, his military training helping him adapt to the flood of information. Mireille worked at a console that existed only when she needed it, appearing and disappearing as her thoughts shifted. "I'm reading the silence now," she said, though her voice sounded strange. Layered. The neural bond had changed something in all of them. It's not a ship or a fleet. It's more like a hole in space where information stops existing. Kethrel and the remaining coalition officers had retreated to the second chance, watching from what they hoped was a safe distance. Forum had stayed behind, his crystalline mind fascinated by what was happening despite the danger. "The void is expanding," Forum observed, his voice chiming with harmonics of concern. "It will reach us in 47 seconds. Daehyun took a deep breath and reached out with his mind, following the instincts the Harbinger had given him. He felt the weapon systems come online. They were nothing like the guns and missiles he knew. These weapons existed half in normal space and half in something else, somewhere the precursors had discovered during their desperate final years. "How do I fire them?" he asked, but even as he spoke he knew the answer. "You didn't fire them. You created them. You thought them into existence. Focus on what you want to protect," the AI's voice said, though it now spoke from inside his head, "not what you want to destroy. The silence is absence, void, nothing. You cannot fight nothing with nothing. You must fight it with meaning." That made no sense, but somehow it also made perfect sense. The silence arrived. One moment the space ahead of them was normal, filled with stars and distant nebulae. The next moment a section of that space simply stopped being. It didn't turn black. Black was something, a color, a presence. This was the absence of everything. Where it existed, sensors found nothing. Not darkness, not empty space, but a complete lack of information, and it was growing. "Coalition patrol ships Daybreak and Orbital Observer are gone," Mireille reported. "No debris, no energy signatures, no quantum echoes. They're just gone." Daehyun felt cold sweat on his forehead. The neural bond gave him knowledge, but it couldn't give him courage. That he had to find on his own. "Firing weapons," he said, though his voice shook. He thought about Earth, about the small apartment where he had grown up, about his mother's cooking and his father's terrible jokes, about summer nights and winter mornings, about all the small, meaningless things that made life worth living. The Harbinger responded. Light erupted from the ship, but it wasn't like any weapon blast Daehyun had seen. It flowed like water, curved like music, shifted colors like emotion. It hit the edge of the silence, and for a moment, just a moment, the void flickered. Stars reappeared where there had been nothing. Space existed again. Information flooded back into reality. Then the silence pushed back and the void expanded again, swallowing the stars that had just returned. "It's not enough," Byung-ho said. "We slowed it down but didn't stop it." "Because you're fighting it like a target," the AI said. "You're still thinking in straight lines. Attack and defense. Action and reaction. The silence exists outside those patterns," Mireille suddenly understood. Her linguistic training, her years studying dead languages and alien thought patterns, gave her an insight the others lacked. It's like translation. You can't translate word for word. You have to capture meaning, context, emotion. The silence erases meaning, so we have to restore it. Not just information, but why that information matters. She reached out with her own neural connection, joining her thoughts to Daehyun's. The weapon changed, becoming more complex. It didn't just restore space, it restored purpose. Where the silence tried to make things meaningless, Mireille's influence made them matter again. The effect was stronger. The void retreated several kilometers. But it wasn't enough. The silence was vast, and they were just 3 bonded humans in a ship they barely understood. "The Coalition fleet needs to evacuate." Kethral's voice came over the communication channel. "We're calling for reinforcements, but they won't arrive for hours. You need to buy us time." "We're trying," Daehyun snapped. "This thing destroyed the precursors. Forgive us if we don't beat it in the first 5 minutes. Another ship went silent. Then another. The silence was consuming the system faster now, accelerating. It had tasted the Harbinger's weapons and adapted. That was the horror of it, the AI explained. The silence learned. It consumed not just matter, but experience, knowledge, causality itself. Every attack taught it how to defend. Every defense taught it how to attack. We need to do something it cannot predict, Byung-ho said. Something illogical. Humans are supposed to be good at that, Varim added. Despite being non-human and unable to bond with the ship, he had stayed to observe, his scientific curiosity overcoming his survival instinct. Your species is famous for making decisions that make no sense to others. Dae-hyun felt the weight of expectation crushing down on him. 4 million years of planning, an entire species' dying hope, and it all came down to him being random enough, weird enough, human enough to fight something that existed outside normal reality. Then Mirai started humming. It was an old song, something from Earth. Dae-hyun didn't recognize it at first, but the melody was familiar, comforting, completely inappropriate for the situation, and it worked. The Harbinger's weapons changed again, this time taking on rhythm and melody. The attacks didn't follow straight paths anymore. They curved and swirled like music notes, sometimes retreating before attacking, sometimes splitting into harmonies, sometimes pausing in ways that made no tactical sense. The silence couldn't predict it. How could it predict something that followed emotional logic instead of strategic logic? The void stopped expanding. For the first time since arriving, the silence hesitated. Keep going, the AI urged. You're finding it. The way to fight. Not with weapons, but with meaning, with creation, with the chaotic beauty of conscious thought. Byung-ho joined in, adding his own experience. Military tactics flowed through the weapons, but twisted. He would start a flanking maneuver, then abandon it halfway. He would focus all firepower on one point, then suddenly scatter it. He made decisions that contradicted his training, that made no sense even to him, acting on instinct and gut feeling instead of logic. And slowly, incredibly, they pushed the silence back. But the cost was enormous. The 3 bonded humans were burning through mental energy faster than their bodies could sustain. Dae-hyun's nose started bleeding. Mirai's hands shook. Byung-ho's vision blurred. We can't keep this up, Dae-hyun gasped. We're going to pass out or die. The silence is retreating, Varim announced. It's withdrawing from the system. They had won, barely, at tremendous cost. But they had won. The void pulled back, shrinking until it disappeared entirely. Space returned to normal. Stars shone again. The system was saved. Dae-hyun collapsed in the command throne, his body shaking with exhaustion. Mirai fell to her knees. Byung-ho caught himself on a console that materialized to support him. Is it over? Mirai asked weakly. No, the AI said, and there was something like sadness in its voice. This was merely a scout, a probe. The true silence, the full force of it, is still coming. And it knows about you now. It knows humanity exists. It will return with everything it has. Kethral's voice crackled over the comm. The coalition fleet is arriving. They're demanding a full report and immediate surrender of the precursor vessel. Dae-hyun wanted to laugh but didn't have the energy. They had just saved the system, proven the silence existed, and demonstrated that only humans could fight it. And the coalition's first response was to demand they surrender their only weapon. What do we do? He asked. Byung-ho straightened up, his years of command experience taking over. We prepare. The AI said there are 11 other ships like this one hidden across the galaxy. We find them. We bond more humans. We build an army. And if the coalition tries to stop us? Mirai asked. The captain's expression hardened. Then we do what humans have always done when faced with impossible odds and institutional stupidity. We ignore the rules and save everyone anyway. The silence that followed the AI's words was heavy. Everyone in the chamber stood frozen, trying to process what they had just heard. An ancient enemy, a dying civilization's last hope. Humanity as the solution to a problem 4 million years old. Kethral was the first to move. He stepped forward, his feathers bristling with agitation. This is absurd. You expect us to believe that primitive humans are somehow special? That they alone can fight this silence? The AI tilted its head again. I do not expect you to believe. I am simply stating facts recorded by my creators before their extinction. Your skepticism is noted, but it does not change reality. Show us proof, Kethral demanded. Show us this silence exists. Show us anything beyond stories and ancient propaganda. The hologram flickered and suddenly the walls displayed something new. It was a star map, showing their current position in the galaxy. A small red dot pulsed in the void sector where they were now. Then the map zoomed out, showing neighboring sectors. 3 of them were marked in black. These 3 sectors have gone silent in the past 6 months, the AI said. No transmissions. No ships returning. Coalition patrols sent to investigate have not reported back. Your government assumes pirates or some natural phenomenon. They are wrong. Forim stepped closer to the display, his crystalline body refracting the light into rainbow patterns on the floor. I have read reports of these incidents. The Coalition Science Council believes it is related to gravitational anomalies. They are still investigating. They will find nothing, the AI said. The silence leaves nothing to find. By the time they realize the truth, it will be too late. Mirai had been quiet, but now she spoke up. Her voice was steady despite the fear in her eyes. You said the precursors created us to fight this thing. How? What do we have that all their technology couldn't defeat? The hologram turned to her. Creativity, unpredictability, the ability to think in contradictions and paradoxes. The silence operates on logic and pattern recognition. It predicts thoughts before they fully form and consumes them. But human thoughts do not follow straight lines. You think in metaphors, in emotions, in dreams and stories. You can hold 2 opposing ideas as true at the same time. The silence cannot predict you because you often cannot predict yourselves. Daehyun laughed, but there was no humor in it. So we're the chosen ones because we're illogical? That's what you're saying. Not illogical, the AI corrected. Translogical. You think beyond logic, around it, through it. This is not weakness. It is strength. Byung-ho had been listening quietly, his experienced mind weighing everything. He had been a salvage captain for 20 years and before that a military officer for 10. He knew when someone was lying and when they were telling the truth, no matter how impossible that truth seemed. Let's say we believe you, he said carefully. What exactly do you expect us to do? We're just a salvage crew, 5 humans and a handful of coalition observers. Even if this silence exists, what can we possibly do against something that destroyed the precursors? The AI's form brightened slightly. This vessel contains weapons designed specifically for human neural patterns. Technology that responds to your unique way of thinking. My creators knew that traditional weapons would fail against the silence, so they created new ones. Weapons that do not destroy matter but restore information. That do not follow predictable targeting patterns but flow like water, like music, like poetry. The chamber floor began to shift. A console rose from the smooth surface, covered in symbols that shifted between geometric patterns and something that looked almost like musical notation. This is the command interface, the AI explained. It requires human thought to operate. Touch it and the ship will bond with you. You will understand how to use its systems. Everyone looked at the console. No one moved. What does bonding mean? Mirai asked. A neural connection. The ship will integrate with your brain's electrical patterns. You will be able to control it through thought and intention. The process is irreversible. Absolutely not, Kethril said immediately. This could be a trap, a way to control or harm humans. The Coalition cannot allow this without proper testing and evaluation. There is no time for testing, the AI said. The silence moves faster than you realize. In 6 months it has consumed 3 sectors. In 6 more months it will reach populated systems. In a year it will be at your homeworlds. Byung-ho looked at his crew. Daehyun was young and scared but trying to hide it. Mirai was fascinated despite her fear, her scientific mind racing. He thought about Earth, about the billions of humans who had no idea that an ancient horror was coming for them. If we refuse, he asked, then the silence will continue unopposed. All species in this galaxy will cease to exist. Not killed, not conquered, but erased. As if you never were. One of the Coalition security officers spoke up, his voice harsh. This is insane. We should leave this ship immediately and report back to command. Let them decide what to do. As if responding to his words, alarms suddenly blared. The AI's form flickered urgently. A vessel at the edge of this system has just gone silent. All transmissions stopped at the same moment. Vorim immediately activated his communication device. Coalition patrol ship Daybreak, please respond. Static. This is the second chance calling Coalition vessel Daybreak. Please respond to this transmission. Nothing but empty static answered. The AI changed the wall display. It showed a tactical view of the system. The Daybreak had been 10 light minutes away at the system's outer boundary. Now its marker had turned from green to black. Impossible, Kethril breathed. We just received a status report from them 2 hours ago. The silence is here, the AI said. It was drawn by the ship's activation. It knows the Harbinger exists. It will not allow humanity to access precursor weapons. Another alarm. Another ship went silent. The Orbital Observer, a science vessel that had been studying a nearby moon. How is it moving so fast? One of the security officers demanded. Nothing can cross that distance in seconds. The silence does not move through normal space, the AI explained. It exists in the spaces between thoughts, between moments of causality. It is here because it was always going to be here. Time means little to it. Panic started to set in. The coalition officers began arguing about evacuation procedures. Kethril demanded they return to the second chance immediately. Vorm calculated their odds of escape and found them wanting, but Daehyun walked forward. He approached the console slowly, each step deliberate. Byung-ho called his name, but the young technician didn't stop. Daehyun, wait, Mirai said. We don't know what this will do to you. He looked back at her, and she saw something in his eyes she had never seen before. Determination. Purpose. We're going to die if we do nothing. The whole galaxy is going to die. If there's even a chance this is real, we have to try. The choice must be yours, the AI said. I cannot force this. The Harbinger will only accept willing bondmates. Daehyun reached out and touched the console. Light exploded through him. He screamed, not in pain but in shock as information flooded into his mind. He saw the fall of the precursors, civilizations burning, the silence spreading like a cancer across galaxies. He saw the desperate hope they had placed in humanity, the careful manipulation of evolution across billions of years. He saw the weapons, the technology, the impossible science that had been waiting for him, and he understood. When the light faded, Daehyun stood straighter. His eyes glowed faintly with internal light. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that hadn't been there before. It's real, he said. All of it. And we're the only ones who can fight it. Byung-ho made his decision in that moment. He walked to the console and placed his hand beside Daehyun's. The light took him too, and he gasped as knowledge poured into him. Combat tactics, ship operations, the true nature of reality itself. Mirai joined them seconds later. Then, after a moment's hesitation, so did 2 of the Coalition security officers who were human. The Harbinger accepted them all. And as it did, the ship came fully alive. Power surged through systems that had slept for 4 million years. Weapons charged, shields initialized. The ancient vessel prepared for war. The silence is 3 light minutes away, the AI announced. It will be here soon. Are you ready? Daehyun smiled, though his glowing eyes held no warmth. No, but we're going to fight anyway. That's what humans do. The second chance docked with the ancient ship 2 hours later. During those 2 hours, Kethril had sent 17 emergency messages to the Coalition command. He demanded instructions, backup, and most importantly, he demanded that humans be removed from the operation immediately. The Coalition's response was simple. Investigate, but do nothing to anger the ancient vessel. If it had responded to humans, then humans would lead the initial exploration. Kethril's feathers ruffled with barely contained fury. Now they stood in the airlock, suited up and ready. Byung-ho checked his weapon one last time. Beside him, Daehyun fidgeted with his scanner. Mirai carried a specialized data recorder for linguistic analysis. Kethril and Vorm brought their own equipment, along with 4 Coalition security officers who said nothing but watched everything. Remember, Byung-ho said, his voice calm despite the tension. We don't know what's inside. Stay together. Don't touch anything unless I give the order. The airlock opened. The corridor beyond was pristine. The walls were smooth and white, glowing with their own internal light. The air that rushed in was breathable, perfectly balanced oxygen and nitrogen. After 4 million years of floating dead in space, the ship's life support had activated and stabilized in less than 3 hours. They stepped inside, and the airlock sealed behind them with a soft hiss. The temperature is 22 degrees, Vorm announced, his crystalline voice echoing slightly, optimal for most carbon-based life forms. The air composition is remarkably similar to Earth's atmosphere. How is that possible? One of the security officers asked. Nobody had an answer. They moved down the corridor slowly. Their boots made soft sounds on the floor, which seemed to be made of the same material as the walls. Everything was seamless, flowing from floor to wall to ceiling without any joints or connections. Then Daehyun saw the symbols. They appeared on the walls as he walked past, glowing softly. At first they looked like random patterns, geometric shapes that shifted and changed, but when he looked directly at them, they began to stabilize. "Captain," he said quietly, "the walls are doing something." Everyone stopped. Kethril stepped forward and examined the symbols. They remained unstable, flowing and changing like water. He reached out to touch one, and his hand passed right through it. It was a hologram projected from somewhere inside the wall itself. "Speak," Mireille said suddenly. "Daehyun, say something." He looked at her, confused. "What should I say?" "Anything. Just use your voice." "Okay, we come in peace?" He felt stupid saying it, like a bad line from an old movie. The symbols responded immediately. They locked into stable forms, arranged in neat rows along the walls. They looked almost like writing, with repeating patterns and clear structure. Mireille stepped closer, her eyes wide. She pulled out her data recorder and began scanning frantically. "This is incredible. The linguistic structure is similar to human languages. Subject-verb-object arrangement. There are markers for emotional context, temporal indicators, even what looks like metaphorical constructions. Can you read it?" Byung-ho asked. "Not yet, but give me time." Kethril tried speaking again, this time in the common coalition language. The symbols immediately became unstable, flowing back into chaotic patterns. When he stopped, they stabilized again when Daehyun breathed loudly. "The ship only responds to human vocal patterns," Vorim observed. "This is highly irregular." They continued deeper into the vessel. The corridors branched and split, leading in dozens of directions. But whenever they came to an intersection, lights would appear on the floor, guiding them forward. The ship wanted them to go somewhere specific. After 20 minutes of walking, they entered a large chamber. It was circular, maybe 100 meters across, with a high domed ceiling. In the center of the room stood a pillar of light, solid and bright. As they approached, the pillar began to shift and change. It formed into a shape. Humanoid, but not quite human. Tall and slender, with proportions that were slightly wrong. The figure's face was smooth and featureless, but somehow it still seemed to be looking directly at them. "Greetings," the figure said. Its voice came from everywhere at once, filling the chamber. It spoke in English, perfectly pronounced. Everyone froze. Weapons were raised. Hearts pounded. "Please do not be alarmed," the figure continued. "I am the custodian of this vessel. I have been waiting a very long time for you to arrive." Byung-ho stepped forward slowly, his weapon still raised but not quite pointing at the hologram. "What are you? What is this ship?" "I am an artificial intelligence created by the species you call the Precursors. This vessel is named the Harbinger. It was built 4 million of your years ago, during the final days of my creator's civilization." Mireille's hands shook as she recorded everything. 4 million years. The number was almost impossible to comprehend. Human civilization was only a few thousand years old. This ship had been floating in space since before humans had even evolved. "Why did it respond to us?" Daehyun asked. "Why humans?" The holographic figure tilted its head, a gesture that seemed almost curious. "Because you are the reason this ship was built. You are what my creators were searching for across millions of years and countless worlds. You are the answer to a question they asked when your species did not yet exist." Kethril pushed forward, his patience finally breaking. "Impossible. Humans are one of the youngest species in the galaxy. They have no ancient heritage, no lost civilization. They are technologically primitive compared to the Coalition. Why would beings as advanced as the Precursors care about them?" The hologram turned to face Kethril. "Your species, Avalon, was also created by the Precursors, as were the Crystalline Collective, the Draknari Empire, the Voss Republic, and 647 other species currently active in this galaxy. All of you were experiments. All of you were attempts to solve a problem." Silence fell over the chamber. Even Kethril had nothing to say. "What problem?" Byung-ho asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "The silence," the AI replied. "An enemy from beyond your galaxy. An enemy that does not consume matter but thought itself. The Precursors fought them for 10,000 years. They lost." The hologram raised one hand and the walls of the chamber changed. They showed images now, moving pictures of a civilization vast beyond imagination, cities that spanned entire planets, ships that moved between stars like birds flying between trees. Billions of beings living in peace and prosperity. Then the images changed. Darkness began to spread across the stars. Not the darkness of empty space, but something worse. A darkness that erased. Where it touched, stars didn't explode or fade. They simply stopped existing as if they had never been there at all. The silence does not destroy, the AI said. It removes the possibility of existence. It consumes information, causality, memory, and thought. Everything my creators tried failed. Their weapons passed through it. Their shields offered no protection. They could not fight something that existed outside the normal rules of reality. The images showed the precursors retreating, galaxy after galaxy. Their vast civilization crumbled. Their populations fell from trillions to billions, from billions to millions. In their final days, my creators realized their mistake. They had been too rigid in their thinking. Their minds followed patterns logical and predictable. The silence could predict them and therefore consume them. They needed something different, something chaotic and creative, something that thought in ways the silence could not predict. The hologram looked at each of them in turn, but its gaze lingered longest on Daehyun. They needed humanity. Mirai found her voice again, though it shook. You're saying the precursors created us? That they seeded Earth with human ancestors? Yes. They accelerated your evolution, guided it carefully. They gave your species something unique. A neurological structure that processes language through emotion, through metaphor, through recursive abstraction. You think in ways no other species can. You are unpredictable, even to yourselves. The AI paused, and for a moment it almost seemed sad. My creators died before they could see if their final experiment would succeed. But they built this ship and 11 others like it and programmed them to wait, to sleep until the day humanity finally reached the stars and found us. The hologram extended its hand toward Daehyun. That day is today, and I must warn you, the silence is returning. It has entered your galaxy, and only you can stop it. The salvage ship Second Chance drifted through the void sector like a tiny insect in an ocean of darkness. Captain Byung-ho stood on the bridge, his weathered hands gripping the railing as he stared at the view screen. What he saw there made no sense. The object floating before them was massive. It stretched across space like a sleeping giant, easily 10 times the size of the largest coalition warship. Its surface was dark, almost black, but it caught the starlight in strange ways. Sometimes it looked metal. Sometimes it looked like stone. Sometimes it seemed to shift between the two. How long has it been out here? Asked Daehyun, the young technician standing beside him. He was thin and tall, with tired eyes from too many long shifts in deep space. Coalition records say they found it 100 years ago, Byung-ho replied. His voice was rough, like gravel. Nobody's been able to open it. Nobody's been able to scan inside it. Hell, nobody even knows what it's made of. Daehyun whistled low. 100 years was a long time for the Galactic Coalition. They had technology that could tear apart stars and fold space like paper. If they couldn't crack this thing open, it was either truly ancient or truly dangerous. Maybe both. The bridge door slid open and Mirai walked in, carrying a data tablet. She was older than Daehyun, maybe early 30s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She worked as a xenolinguist, which meant she studied alien languages. Most of them were dead languages now, spoken by species that had vanished long ago. The Coalition sent new orders, she said, not looking up from her tablet. They want us to do another scan. Same as the last 40 expeditions, I'm guessing. Kethral entered behind her. He was tall and covered in sleek feathers that shimmered blue and green under the ship's lights. His species, the Avalons, had been part of the Coalition for thousands of years. He looked at the humans the way someone might look at children playing with tools they didn't understand. Your species has been part of the Coalition for only 200 years, Kethral said, his voice sharp and clear like a bird's call. Try not to damage anything important. Byung-ho said nothing. He had learned long ago that arguing with Coalition officers was pointless. Humans were the newcomers in galactic society. They had no political power, no ancient achievements, nothing that made them special. They were just another species in a galaxy full of thousands. Daehyun, you're on external scanning duty, Byung-ho said. Take a pod out and run sensor sweeps along the hull. Check for any weak points or access hatches. Daehyun nodded and headed for the pod bay. External scanning was boring work, the kind of job they gave to junior technicians. He didn't mind. Being outside in a pod was better than being stuck on the bridge with Kethral, and his constant reminders about how young and unimportant humanity was. The scanning pod was small and cramped. Daehyun squeezed inside and sealed the hatch. The pod detached from the Second Chance with a soft thunk, and then he was drifting toward the ancient vessel. Up close, it was even more impressive. The hull curved away in all directions, smooth and perfect. There were no seams, no welds, no signs of construction at all. It looked like someone had carved the entire ship from a single piece of material. Daehyun activated his scanners and began moving slowly along the surface. The sensors showed nothing useful. The hull was too dense, too strange. It absorbed every kind of scan he tried. Radar, lidar, thermal, quantum field analysis. Nothing penetrated more than a few millimeters. "This is useless," he muttered to himself in Korean. He often spoke Korean when he was alone. It reminded him of home, of Earth, of a life before deep space salvage. 100 years and nobody's learned anything. What are we even doing here? The ship's lights flickered. Daehyun froze. He stared at the hull in front of him. Had he imagined that? The ancient vessel had been completely dark for a century. Dead. Inactive. A floating tomb. The lights flickered again, stronger this time. A line of pale blue light ran across the hull, following a path that hadn't been visible before. Then another line appeared. And another. Within seconds, the entire section of hull in front of him was glowing with geometric patterns that hurt to look at. "Captain," Daehyun shouted into his radio. "Captain, something's happening." "The ship is lighting up." Back on the second chance, alarms began blaring. Byung-ho rushed to the view screen while Kethril stood frozen in shock. Mirai's tablet slipped from her hands. The ancient ship was waking up. Lights cascaded across its surface like water flowing downhill. Patterns emerged and disappeared. Symbols that looked almost like writing scrolled across the hull. The ship hummed with power, a deep vibration that Daehyun could feel in his bones even through the vacuum of space. "What did you do?" Kethril demanded, his feathers standing on end. "I didn't do anything," Daehyun said. "I was just running scans and talking to myself and then—" "Talking?" Mirai interrupted. "What were you saying?" "I was just complaining in Korean. I wasn't talking to the ship, I was just—" A section of the ancient vessel's hull began to move. A circular door 50 meters across spiraled open like the iris of a giant eye. Inside was a docking bay, perfectly sized for the second chance. Lights illuminated the interior, welcoming and warm. Vorum, the crystalline engineer who had been silent until now, stepped forward. His body was made of living crystal that refracted light into rainbow patterns. "This vessel has shown no response to any stimulus for 100 standard years. 743 expeditions. 62 different species attempted contact. Nothing worked." He turned to face Daehyun's pod on the view screen. "Then a human speaks and it awakens immediately. The statistical probability of coincidence is 0.0003%. Kethril's feathers smoothed down, but his eyes remained hard. "It must be the vocal vibrations. The frequency of the human voice happens to match some activation protocol." "Then test it," Byung-ho said. "You speak to it." Kethril hesitated, then activated his own comm link to broadcast toward the ancient ship. He spoke in clear Avalon, his voice carrying across space through the radio waves. Nothing happened. Vorim tried next, broadcasting in his species' crystalline chime language. "Still nothing." "Daehyun," Byung-ho said quietly. "Say something else." Daehyun swallowed hard. He felt like he was standing on the edge of something vast and terrifying. Hello? Can you hear me?" The ancient ship responded instantly. More lights flooded through its corridors. The docking bay extended a guidance beam that locked onto the second chance. And in the center of that massive open doorway, a holographic symbol appeared and hung in space. Mirai gasped. "That symbol. I've seen variations of it in precursor fragments. It's old. 4 million years old at least." "What does it mean?" Byung-ho asked. She stared at the symbol, her mind racing through decades of linguistic study. I think it means welcome home." 3 days had passed since the battle with the Silence. 3 days of interrogations, medical examinations, and political arguments that seemed to go nowhere. The coalition had sent a full investigation fleet, complete with admirals, scientists, and politicians who all wanted answers to questions they didn't understand how to ask. Daehyun sat in a sterile white room aboard the coalition command ship, answering the same questions for the 5th time. His eyes still glowed faintly, a permanent side effect of the neural bond. The doctor said it would fade eventually, but he wasn't sure he believed them. "Describe again how you controlled the precursor weapon," the interrogator asked. She was from a species called the Valorians, tall and thin with skin that shifted colors based on mood. Right now she was deep purple, which meant frustration. I thought about home, Daehyun said, exhausted. I thought about things that mattered. The weapon responded to meaning, not just intention. I've told you this 4 times already. And I am trying to understand how that is possible, she replied. Weapon systems require precise calculations, targeting protocols, energy management. You describe something more like art than warfare. Maybe that's the point. The door opened and Kethril entered, his feathers now a dull gray. He had witnessed everything, had seen the silence consume ships and the Harbinger push it back. His skepticism had died somewhere during those terrible minutes. The human is free to go, Kethril announced. The Coalition Council has made their decision. Daehyun stood, his legs still weak. What decision? Come. Your captain and the linguist are waiting. They walked through the massive Coalition ship, passing dozens of species from across the galaxy. All of them stopped to stare at Daehyun. Some looked afraid. Some looked angry. A few looked hopeful. Word had spread quickly. Humanity, the youngest species, had accessed precursor technology. They had fought something that shouldn't exist and survived. The political implications were staggering. Byung-ho and Mirai waited in a conference room with enormous windows showing the stars. The Harbinger floated nearby, surrounded by Coalition patrol ships. Beside them stood Vorum, his crystalline body catching the starlight beautifully. The Coalition has decided to authorize continued human operation of the precursor vessel, Kethril announced formally. Under strict observation and with Coalition oversight, of course. Of course, Byung-ho said dryly. And what happens when the silence returns with more than just a scout? Kethril's feathers rippled. Then we hope you can repeat your success. Hope isn't a strategy, Mirai said. We need to find the other 11 ships. We need to bond more humans. We need to prepare for what's coming. The Coalition cannot simply allow precursor weapons to be distributed freely, a new voice said. Admiral Tarkesh entered the room, a massive reptilian being whose species had been part of the Coalition for 8,000 years. We must consider the political ramifications. Political ramifications? Daehyun felt anger rising. 3 sectors have gone silent. Billions of beings are gone. And you're worried about politics? I am worried about giving overwhelming military power to a species that joined the Coalition 200 years ago, Tarkesh replied coolly. Forgive my caution, but history teaches us that power corrupts. The silence doesn't care about your caution, Byung-ho said. It's coming whether you're ready or not, Vorum chimed softly, drawing attention. I have analyzed all data from the encounter. The mathematical models are clear. Only human neural patterns can operate precursor weapons effectively. This is not political. It is biological fact. Then we train other species to think like humans, Tarkesh argued. You can't, Mirai said. We're not special because we're smarter or stronger. We're special because our brains developed differently. You can't train someone to have a different brain structure. The argument continued for another hour. Admirals and politicians debated while Daehyun, Mirai, and Byung-ho sat silently, too exhausted to care about bureaucratic nonsense. Finally, Kethril spoke up. His voice was quiet but carried weight. I was skeptical. I believed humans were pretending to be important, manipulating ancient technology for political gain. I was wrong. Everyone turned to look at him. I saw the silence. I saw what it did to our ships. And I saw 3 humans, in a vessel they barely understood, push it back through sheer force of will and creativity. If the precursors chose humanity for this purpose, who are we to argue with beings who were building empires when our oldest civilizations were still learning to make fire? Tarkesh rumbled deeply, a sound like rocks grinding. You suggest we give humanity carte blanche to access weapons of unimaginable power? I suggest we give them whatever they need to save us all from extinction, Kethril replied. The room fell silent. Finally, Tarkesh nodded slowly. Very well. The Coalition will authorize human crews to locate and activate the remaining precursor vessels. But there will be oversight. There will be accountability. And if humanity abuses this power, there will be consequences. Fair enough, Byung-ho said. Now can we please get started before more people die? 2 weeks later, the Harbinger entered the Carina sector. The AI had provided coordinates for another sleeping ship, and this time they brought reinforcements. 12 more humans, volunteers from various colonies and stations, engineers, soldiers, scientists, pilots, all of them willing to bond with ancient technology to fight an ancient evil. They found the second ship orbiting a dead star. It was similar to the Harbinger, but smaller, more streamlined. Where the Harbinger felt like a battleship, this one felt like a scout vessel. Daehyun watched from the Harbinger's command chamber as one of the new recruits approached the second ship. Her name was Ji-woo, a young pilot who had volunteered immediately after hearing about the silence. She flew her small shuttle close to the ancient hull and spoke into her comm. "Hello, my name is Ji-woo. I'm human from Earth. If you can hear me, please respond." The second ship woke up instantly. Lights cascaded across its surface just like the Harbinger had done. A docking port opened, welcoming her inside. Mirai smiled. "It's working. The precursors built 12 ships and they're all waiting for us." Over the next 3 months, they found 6 more vessels. Each one responded only to human voices. Each one bonded with willing volunteers. And each bonded human changed, their eyes glowing, their minds expanding to hold knowledge that shouldn't fit in human brains. The coalition watched with a mixture of awe and fear. Humanity was becoming something new, something more. They weren't quite human anymore, but they weren't quite precursor either. They existed in between, a bridge between 2 civilizations separated by 4 million years. News spread across the galaxy. The silence was real. Ships were disappearing. Entire colonies had gone silent. Fear gripped civilizations that had known nothing but peace for thousands of years, and humanity offered hope. Volunteers flooded in from every human colony. Young people eager to be heroes, old people with nothing left to lose. Families bonding together so they could fight together. The bonded humans numbered in the hundreds now, soon to be thousands. Kethril visited the Harbinger again, this time as a friend rather than an overseer. He found Daehyun in the observation deck staring at the stars. "Do you regret it?" Kethril asked. "Bonding with the ship? Becoming something other than fully human?" Daehyun considered the question carefully. His thoughts moved faster now, branching in directions that would have been impossible before. He could feel the Harbinger around him, inside him a constant presence. He would never be alone again, never be just himself again. "Sometimes," he admitted, "I miss being simple. Just a salvage technician worried about making rent and whether the calf machine was working. But I've seen what's coming. I've touched the memories the precursors left behind. I know what the silence will do if we don't stop it." He turned to look at Kethril. "I'll miss being normal, but I'd rather be useful." Kethril's feathers shifted to a color Daehyun had learned meant respect. "The Coalition owes humanity an apology. We dismissed you as young and unimportant. We were fools." "You weren't wrong, though," Daehyun said. "We are young. We are unimportant in the grand scheme of things. We just happen to be the right kind of unimportant for this particular job." Alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. Mirai's voice came over the comm, urgent and afraid. "The silence is back. Multiple contacts across 3 sectors. It's not scouting anymore. This is the real thing." Daehyun felt his heart race, but his glowing eyes remained steady. Around the galaxy, 7 precursor ships powered up simultaneously. Hundreds of bonded humans took their positions, ready to fight an enemy that shouldn't exist. "Battle stations," Byung-ho's voice echoed through every ship. "This is what we trained for. This is what we were chosen for. The precursors believed in us 4 million years ago. Now we prove they were right." The Harbinger and its sister ships moved to intercept the silence. Behind them came coalition fleets ready to support however they could. Thousands of species, millions of ships, billions of beings united in hope. And at the center of it all, humanity stood ready. Not because they were the strongest or smartest or oldest, but because they thought in ways the silence couldn't predict. Because they created meaning in the face of meaninglessness. Because they were beautifully, chaotically, impossibly human.